The creative furnace that forged television's most iconic sitcom has remained shrouded in mystery for decades, until now. A key witness to the genius and chaos behind Seinfeld has finally stepped forward, revealing the raw, unfiltered dynamics that shaped the show's legendary table reads. After nearly 25 years of silence, former showrunner assistant Elaine Cohen has opened the vault on what really happened when Jerry, Julia, Michael, and Jason gathered around that table with Larry David and his writing team. What prompted this insider to break her silence after all these years? How did these behind-closed-doors sessions differ from the polished performances we came to love? And what tensions simmered beneath the surface of America's favorite show about nothing? Stay with us as we unravel the untold story that reshapes everything we thought we knew about one of television's most analyzed series. Seinfeld wasn't just a sitcom. It was a cultural phenomenon that redefined comedy and television storytelling for generations to come. With over 76 million viewers tuning in for its finale and billions in syndication revenue, its influence stretches far beyond its 9-season run. But before we dive into the revelations that have sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry, let's rewind to understand who this keeper of secrets really is and how she found herself at the epicenter of comedy history. Elaine Cohen wasn't born into Hollywood royalty or groomed for a career in television. Born in 1968 in Teaneck, New Jersey, to a high school English teacher and an accountant, her path to the Seinfeld writer's room was anything but direct. Growing up in a household where dinner conversations often centered around literature and wordplay, Cohen developed a sharp ear for dialogue and an appreciation for the mechanics of storytelling. "I was that kid with a flashlight under the covers, staying up way too late reading," Cohen recalled in her recent podcast interview. "My parents thought I was going to be a novelist or journalist. The television industry wasn't even on my radar." After graduating from Rutgers University with a degree in communications, Cohen moved to Los Angeles in 1990 with vague aspirations of working in entertainment. Her timing couldn't have been more fortuitous. Seinfeld had just completed its rocky first season, a brief run of episodes that showed promise but hadn't yet captured the cultural zeitgeist. Through a college friend who worked in NBC's Human Resources Department, Cohen landed an interview for an entry-level position in the network's comedy development division. Her quick wit and organizational skills impressed executives who were scrambling to support a slate of new productions, including the fledgling Seinfeld. "It was my third day on the job when I was reassigned," Cohen remembers. "Someone came to my cubicle and said, 'We need someone smart for Larry David's team. You start tomorrow.' I had no idea what I was walking into." That seemingly random reassignment would place Cohen at ground zero for what would become the defining television comedy of a generation. As a 22-year-old assistant with no industry experience, she was about to become both participant in and witness to comedy history. From 1991 to 1998, Elaine Cohen's official title evolved from production assistant to writer's room coordinator to showrunner assistant. But her actual role defied simple job descriptions. She became what longtime Seinfeld writer Peter Melman described as the living institutional memory of the show. Cohen's daily responsibilities included managing schedules, coordinating between departments, and, most significantly, documenting the table reads that would shape each episode's final form. Sitting in the corner of the room with her notepad, she captured not just line changes and punch-up suggestions, but the interpersonal dynamics that would remain hidden from public view for decades. "In the beginning, I was terrified," Cohen reveals. "Here's Jerry Seinfeld, already a successful stand-up, and Larry David, this intimidating presence, and I'm supposed to speak up when something isn't working? But that was literally part of my job." Cohen's unique position granted her unprecedented access to the creative alchemy that produced 180 episodes of groundbreaking television. She witnessed firsthand how the cast's chemistry evolved, how power dynamics shifted as the show's success grew, and how the notorious perfectionism of its creators shaped both the product and the people making it. Her first big moment came during the table read for The Pez Dispenser, a season 3 episode. When a joke fell flat, she noticed the writers exchanging nervous glances, but nobody spoke up. "I don't know what possessed me, but I suggested an alternate punchline," Cohen remembers. The room went silent. Then Jerry laughed and said, "The kid's got timing." From that moment on, I wasn't just furniture in the room. This acceptance into the inner circle would position Cohen as both participant and confidant, roles that would later make her revelations all the more significant. As the show's success exploded, Cohen became one of the few constants in an increasingly complex production, trusted by both the creative team and the performers. But here's where it gets interesting. The table reads that television fans might imagine as lighthearted, collaborative sessions were, according to Cohen, often pressure cookers of creative tension, bruised egos, and brilliant improvisation. The public saw the finished product, polished, precise, perfect, Cohen explains. What they didn't see were the hours of battle that preceded it, the arguments over single words, the moments when certain cast members wouldn't even make eye contact. By season 4, Seinfeld had become a ratings juggernaut and cultural touchstone. As the stakes grew higher, so did the intensity of these closed-door sessions. And, according to Cohen, the dynamic between the show's stars began to shift in ways that would surprise even the most dedicated fans. The standard industry practice for table reads is straightforward. Actors, writers, and key production personnel gather around a large table to read a script aloud for the first time. It's typically a functional exercise to identify problems before production begins. But on Seinfeld, Cohen reveals, these sessions evolved into something far more complex and consequential. Most shows treat table reads as a formality, Cohen explains. On Seinfeld, they were gladiatorial arenas. If a joke died at the table, it was usually dead for good. If an actor struggled with a scene, rewrites would happen overnight. The pressure was enormous. According to Cohen, the typical Seinfeld table read included not just the main cast and writers, but also network executives, production staff, and occasionally special guests, all witnessing what amounted to the first draft of comedy history. Jerry established early on that the table read wasn't just a dry run, Cohen says. It was the first real test of whether an episode worked. He wanted genuine reactions, not polite laughter. This approach created a unique dynamic where performers were simultaneously collaborating and competing, with each fighting for their characters' moments to shine. And as the show's popularity exploded, so did the complexity of these interactions. By the middle of season 4, Cohen notes, the table reads had developed their own unspoken rules and rituals. Jason Alexander, George, would arrive precisely 12 minutes early to review his lines. Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Elaine, preferred to stand during particularly physical scenes. Michael Richards, Kramer, often requested that the production team rearrange the room's furniture to match the set configuration for his entrances. These weren't diva demands, Cohen insists. They were the methods that allowed these incredible performers to find the perfect timing, the perfect delivery. What looked effortless on screen was the result of intense preparation and attention to detail. But it wasn't all mechanical precision. Cohen recalls how some of the show's most memorable moments emerged spontaneously during these sessions. The marine biologist episode, when George delivers that monologue about the golf ball and the whale, that came together during the table read, Cohen reveals. Jason read it straight the first time, and it was funny. Then Larry suggested he build it more like a dramatic story. By the third read-through, everyone in the room was in tears from laughing. That's when we knew it would be a classic. These creative breakthroughs, however, occurred against a backdrop of increasing pressure as the show defined and then redefined television comedy. And according to Cohen, this pressure occasionally manifested in ways that the public never witnessed. There were days when you could cut the tension with a knife, she admits. Episodes where certain cast members wouldn't speak to each other except when the script required it. Creative disagreements that got personal. Remember, these were brilliant, opinionated artists creating under enormous pressure. But here's where Cohen's account becomes truly revelatory. The conventional wisdom about Seinfeld has long held that while Larry David was the volatile creative force, Jerry Seinfeld was the calm center of the production. According to Cohen, the reality was considerably more nuanced. As Seinfeld entered its middle seasons, widely considered its creative peak, the table reads became the site of an increasingly complex power dynamic. According to Cohen, Two competing visions for the show's direction began to emerge, creating fault lines that would remain invisible to the viewing public, but would shape the series in profound ways. There was what I came to think of as the comedy of discomfort camp, led by Larry, who wanted to push boundaries, make the characters more selfish, more morally compromised, Cohen explains. Then there was what I'd call the comedy of observation faction, with Jerry as its center, focusing on the minutiae of daily life and social conventions. This creative tension, Cohen suggests, was both the show's greatest strength and the source of its behind-the-scenes conflicts. As the characters became more extreme and their behavior more questionable, disagreements over tone and content became more frequent and intense. Jason was often caught in the middle, Cohen reveals. He was deeply committed to George's development as this avatar of insecurity and selfishness, but he also worried about the character becoming a cartoon. There were at least 3 table reads where he openly challenged Larry about George's motivations. These challenges sometimes escalated beyond professional disagreements. Cohen recalls one particularly tense session during the development of The Contest, the groundbreaking episode about masturbation that never explicitly mentioned the word. The standards and practices people were in the room, the network executives were nervous, and the cast was walking this tightrope of suggesting without saying, Cohen remembers. After the read, there was a heated exchange, I won't say between whom, about whether they were undermining the comedy by being too coy or making television history by working within the constraints. Another source of tension, according to Cohen, was the expanding role of the secondary cast. As characters like Newman, Susan, and Putty became fan favorites, decisions about their screen time and story prominence sometimes led to difficult conversations. There was a sense among some, and I'm choosing my words carefully here, that the show worked best when focused tightly on the core 4, Cohen says. Others felt the expanding universe was keeping the show fresh. These weren't just creative discussions. They reflected fundamental questions about what Seinfeld was at its heart. But perhaps the most surprising revelation from Cohen involves Michael Richards, whose portrayal of Kramer has become iconic. According to conventional wisdom, Richards was the cast member most separated from the others, often staying in character and avoiding social interaction. Cohen offers a different perspective. Michael wasn't detached. He was dedicated in a way the others weren't, she insists. He approached Kramer as a complete physical and psychological creation. At table reads, he wouldn't just read the lines. He'd fully perform, sometimes knocking over chairs or spilling water. It was magnificent to watch, but it created a certain unpredictability that could be challenging in that environment. This unpredictability occasionally led to what Cohen describes as creative friction between Richards and the writing team, while the other cast members might suggest line changes or character motivations. Richards focused on Kramer's physical language and the architecture of scenes. There was one table read where Michael stopped everything to discuss the position of a door, Cohen recalls. To most people, it seemed like a minor detail, but he understood that Kramer's entrances were fundamental to the character. After 15 minutes of discussion, they actually redesigned the set based on his input. These competing approaches and priorities created an environment that was creatively fertile, but emotionally complex. And as the show's success continued to grow, the stakes of these table reads and the tensions they sometimes produced only increased. But there's another side to this story. While Cohen acknowledges the conflicts and tensions, she also emphasizes that they existed within a context of mutual respect and shared commitment to excellence. Even when they disagreed, sometimes intensely, there was this unspoken understanding that they were making something special, she says. I've worked on many shows since, and I've never seen that combination of creative tension and collective purpose. It was exhausting but extraordinary. As Seinfeld approached its later seasons, however, the dynamic would shift dramatically with one pivotal departure. The 5th season table read for The Puffy Shirt marked a turning point. According to Cohen, there was a subtle but palpable shift in the room's energy, a recognition that something fundamental had changed. Larry was different that day, Cohen recalls, more detached, less combative about script changes. After the read, he pulled me aside and said, Take good notes today. They're going to need them. It was the first indication I had that he was considering leaving. When Larry David departed Seinfeld at the end of the 7th season, the table read process underwent a dramatic transformation. Without David's notorious perfectionism and willingness to scrap entire storylines based on table read performances, the sessions became more collaborative but, according to Cohen, less creatively rigorous. After Larry left, Jerry became the final word, Cohen explains. He had always been involved in every decision, but his style was different, more diplomatic, more willing to let things evolve through rehearsal rather than demanding perfection at the table. This shift created new dynamics within the cast. According to Cohen, Julia Louis-Dreyfus became more assertive about Elaine's storylines, often challenging what she perceived as a diminishment of the character. There was a table read in season 8 where Julia simply put down the script and said, "Elaine wouldn't do this," Cohen remembers. In the Larry era, that might have led to a confrontation. Instead, Jerry called a 15-minute break, talked with Julia privately, and when they returned, they worked out a compromise on the spot. Jason Alexander, too, reportedly became more vocal about George's development, concerned that without David's autobiographical connection to the character, George might become one-dimensional. Jason had this incredible understanding of George's psychology, Cohen says. After Larry left, he became almost a guardian of the character's complexity. If a script had George behaving inconsistently with his established neuroses, Jason would gently but firmly explain why it didn't work. Michael Richards, meanwhile, reportedly struggled with some of the broader comedy that characterized the later seasons. Cohen recalls one particularly difficult table read for The Chicken Roaster, an episode featuring Kramer becoming addicted to the fast food restaurant's chicken. Michael read it as written, but afterward, he expressed concerns that Kramer was becoming too cartoonish, Cohen says. He wanted the character's strangeness to come from a place of twisted logic, not just bizarre behavior for its own sake. These evolving dynamics created what Cohen describes as a more democratic but less focused creative process. The table reads became friendlier affairs, but some of the electric tension that had characterized the earlier seasons was lost. There was this sense that they were caretaking something precious rather than creating something revolutionary, Cohen observes. The question changed from how far can we push this to how do we maintain what we've built? This shift coincided with, and perhaps contributed to, what many critics consider a decline in the show's creative sharpness in its final seasons. Yet Cohen insists that even during this period, the table reads remained unlike anything else in television. Even at its most formulaic, Seinfeld was still breaking ground, she maintains, and those table reads were still moments of truth where pretense fell away and you saw exactly what was working and what wasn't. But the most revealing aspects of Cohen's account concern the final season and the controversial series finale, events that would bring the tensions and competing visions for the show into stark relief. After Seinfeld concluded in 1998, Elaine Cohen moved on to other projects in television, working on shows like Will and Grace, 30 Rock, and more recently, Barry. Throughout her career, she maintained a strict silence about her Seinfeld years, declining interview requests and avoiding industry events where the topic might arise. It wasn't about having secrets to hide, Cohen explains about her decades of silence. It was about respecting the creative process. These were private moments of vulnerability and creation. They weren't mine to share. This commitment to discretion made Cohen a trusted figure in writers' rooms across Hollywood. Yet as years passed and the mythology around Seinfeld grew, she found herself increasingly uncomfortable with what she describes as the sanitized version of the show's creation that became gospel. The breaking point came in 2022, when a high-profile documentary about the series included interviews with many key figures, but presented what Cohen calls a version of events that was neat, tidy, and fundamentally dishonest. I watch people I respect rewriting history, she says. The conflicts that made the show great were being erased. The real story, messy, complicated, human, was being lost. Then came the pandemic, a period of reflection for many in the entertainment industry. For Cohen, it prompted questions about legacy and truth. When she suffered a serious health scare in early 2023, she made a decision. I realized I was possibly the only person who had been in that room, taking notes, witnessing everything, who didn't have a personal mythology to protect. She explains, if I didn't speak up, a crucial piece of television history might be lost. In April 2023, Cohen appeared on the TV's Untold Stories podcast for what was promoted as a discussion about her career in television. 20 minutes into the conversation, she shifted to her Seinfeld years and began sharing observations and anecdotes that contradicted the established narrative about the show's creation. The table reads weren't just work sessions, they were where the real power dynamics of the show played out, Cohen revealed. Everyone knows about Jerry and Larry's partnership, but few understand how Julia became the moral center of that room, how Jason fought for George's dignity even as the character lost his, or how Michael's physicality would transform everyone's understanding of a scene. Cohen's most significant revelations concerned the series finale, which remains one of television's most divisive conclusions. According to the official narrative, the decision to end the show with the four main characters being imprisoned for their moral failings was Jerry Seinfeld's creative choice, fully supported by the returning Larry David. Cohen offers a different account. That final table read was unlike any other, she recalls. There was genuine shock when people realized where the story was going. One cast member, I won't say who, put down the script and walked out for almost 30 minutes. There were arguments about whether this ending betrayed what the show had been or perfectly fulfilled its premise. According to Cohen, the final table read lasted nearly 4 hours, more than twice the normal duration, and included extended discussions about the message being sent to the audience and the legacy being created. There was a moment when someone asked, "Is this how we want to be remembered?" Cohen recalls, and someone else, again, I'm being careful here, responded, "It's not about being remembered. It's about being honest about who these people are." These revelations sparked immediate controversy. Representatives for Jerry Seinfeld issued a statement describing Cohen's account as creative fiction from someone with limited access to the actual creative process. Larry David declined to comment directly, but through a spokesperson expressed surprise that private creative discussions would be shared in this manner. Other Seinfeld writers and producers offered mixed responses, with some supporting Cohen's general characterization while disputing specific details. The cast members have remained notably silent, neither confirming nor denying her account. Yet Cohen stands firmly by her recollections, pointing to the detailed notes she kept throughout her tenure. Notes that she has not shared publicly, but has offered to make available to serious television historians. I'm not interested in gossip or settling scores, she insists. I'm interested in how great art gets made, in the human reality behind the mythology. Seinfeld was a masterpiece created by brilliant, complicated people navigating success and creative pressure. That's the story worth telling. In the months since Cohen's revelations, a more nuanced understanding of Seinfeld has begun to emerge. Television critics have revisited the series with fresh eyes, identifying the creative tensions Cohen described and tracing their impact on the show's evolution. The entertainment industry's reaction has been complex. Some veterans have criticized Cohen for breaking what they consider an unwritten code of confidentiality. Others have praised her for demystifying the creative process and providing context that enriches appreciation of the show. What Elaine did wasn't betrayal, it was illumination, says Jenny Connor, showrunner of Girls and a vocal supporter of Cohen. Great art isn't made by happy families. It's made by passionate people willing to fight for their vision. Understanding that doesn't diminish Seinfeld. It makes what they achieved even more impressive. For fans, Cohen's revelations have sparked renewed interest in the series, with streaming numbers reportedly showing a significant uptick. Online forums buzz with reappraisals of specific episodes, now viewed through the lens of the behind-the-scenes dynamics Cohen described. Cohen herself has experienced mixed consequences. While some industry doors have closed, she reports that certain showrunners now view her as a potential liability. Others have opened. She has been approached to write a memoir and consult on projects about television's creative processes. I've had people in writers' rooms thank me, she says, especially younger writers who felt burdened by this myth of effortless creation. Knowing that even Seinfeld was hard, knowing that conflicts and compromises were part of it, That's liberating. The principals from Seinfeld have largely maintained their silence, though Julia Louis-Dreyfus made a brief comment during a red carpet interview, saying only, "Every family has its stories. The Seinfeld family was no different." Perhaps most significantly, Cohen's revelations have prompted broader discussions about how we document and understand the collaborative art of television. Several universities have approached her about archiving her notes and participating in oral history projects. Today, Elaine Cohen continues her work in television, currently serving as a co-producer on a streaming comedy series. Her Seinfeld revelations, while still controversial in some circles, have established her as an important voice in discussions about television history and creative process. "I don't regret speaking up," she says. "I regret waiting so long. There's this window where history is still living memory, but in danger of being replaced by mythology. I wanted to keep the human story alive." The major figures from Seinfeld have all moved on to new projects and phases of their careers. Jerry Seinfeld continues his stand-up comedy and has directed his first feature film. Julia Louis-Dreyfus has won multiple Emmys for subsequent television work. Jason Alexander directs and teaches acting. Michael Richards has largely retreated from public life. Larry David, whose Curb Your Enthusiasm has now run longer than Seinfeld, recently reflected indirectly on the controversy during a panel discussion. History gets written by the people with the best punchlines. Sometimes the truth is what happens between the jokes. As for the table reads that Cohen brought to light, their influence extends beyond Seinfeld. Many contemporary shows have adopted more rigorous and consequential table read practices, recognizing them as crucial creative moments rather than mere formalities. "What I hope people take from my experience is not gossip about who said what to whom," Cohen concludes. "It's an appreciation for how complicated and human the creative process really is." Seinfeld wasn't great despite the tensions and disagreements. It was great because of them. The friction created the spark. When Elaine Cohen first stepped into that writer's room in 1991, she couldn't have known she was entering television history. When she decided to share her experiences 3 decades later, she couldn't have anticipated the conversations she would spark. The story of Seinfeld's table reads, reminds us that behind every polished cultural product are human beings navigating ambition, insecurity, creative passion, and the pressures of success. It reminds us that great art rarely emerges from perfect harmony, but rather from the productive tension of different visions colliding and compromising. What made Seinfeld revolutionary wasn't just its content, but the creative crucible that produced it. A process we now understand in greater detail thanks to one witness who finally chose to share what she saw. The show about nothing, it turns out, came from something very specific. A group of extraordinarily talented people who didn't always agree, didn't always get along, but shared a commitment to pushing comedy in new directions. If you enjoyed this deep dive into television history, make sure to subscribe for more untold stories from the shows that shaped our culture. And let us know in the comments. Does knowing the messy reality behind Seinfeld change how you see the show?